Good afternoon, you're watching ABC News Ghana. This is the Midday News. Coming up in the headlines, Ghana's economy reported seeing increase in growth rate as Finance Minister announced a steady increase in growth rate. We'll bring you the numbers shortly.
As a percentage of GDP, external and domestic debt represented 43% and 27.6% respectively. Rapid restoration of macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability, avoidance of steeper fiscal adjustment, creation of fiscal space for development spending.
Despite ballooning public debt stock reaching 742 billion Ghana cedis, government reports a positive outlook regarding Ghana's medium-term macroeconomy. But what is this reconciliatory? We'll hear from the experts. Also, nurses and teacher trainees challenge Finance Minister's announcement of paying over 400 million cedis to clear outstanding arrears. We'll hear from Still to come in the bulletin, in business, government announces reintroduction of road tolls in 2025. And on the international front, dozens arrested in Uganda anti-government protests. You're watching ABC News GH. This is the Midday News. Now, let's move on and take our very first story. Minister of Finance Dr. Amin Adam says Ghana's economy is recovering fast and stronger than expected. Delivering the mid-year budget review on the floor of Parliament, the Minister indicated that despite the challenges recorded in the early part of this year, economic indicators such as inflation and exchange rates are declining, while the 4.7% growth rate reported by the Ghana Statistical Service for the first quarter of 2024 exceeds the 3.1% recorded in the same period in 2023. Based on this recovery, the minister says it has become necessary to revise the macroeconomic indicators targeted in the 2024 budgets.
0.9% and 39.1% of the total debt stock respectively. As a percentage of GDP, external and domestic debt represented 43% and 27.6% respectively. Mr. Speaker, Ghana's medium-term macroeconomic and financial outlook and prospects remain positive and favorable despite the challenging global environment. The ongoing improvement in the implementation of the post-COVID-19 program for economic growth reinforces our commitment to navigate through global uncertainties and address domestic challenges. The government's unwavering dedication to maintaining macroeconomic stability, promoting investment, and enhancing social protection programs continues to re-echo our objective of building back better. Mr. Speaker, it has become necessary to revise the 2024 macroeconomic framework due to recent domestic and global economic developments, including the impact of the debt restructuring. Mr. Speaker, key revisions to the macro fiscal targets for 2024 include overall real GDP growth rates revised upwards from 2.8% to 3.1%. Non-oil real GDP growth rate is revised upwards from 2.1% to 2.8%. Growth in GDP deflator scaled down from 20.2% to 7.5%. Nominal overall GDP has been revised from 1.050 billion Ghana cedis, that is 1 trillion Ghana cedis, to 1.020 billion Ghana cedis. Non-oil GDP has been revised from 979 billion Ghana cedis to 977 billion Ghana cedis. End-period head inflation remains unchanged at 15%. Primary balance on commitment basis is maintained at a surplus of 0.5%. and gross international reserves, including oil funds, and encumbered or pledged assets to cover no less than 3 months of imports. 29.
Well, still on the economy, the minister also stated that the debt restructuring program instituted by the government 2 years ago has been largely successful at bringing back the debt to sustainable levels and facilitating Ghana's economic recovery. He says the government has successfully honored 2 coupon payments for the domestic bondholders, with a 3rd coupon payment to be made by August this year. According to the minister, an agreement has been reached with the Eurobond Holders Committee to restructure approximately $13.1 billion of outstanding, as the debt restructuring is on track to reducing Ghana's public debt to 55% by 2028.
The debt restructuring has been a crucial pillar of Ghana's economic recovery from the 2022 crisis. It has helped to restore confidence in the economy, and the following benefits are evident: rapid restoration of macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability, avoidance of steeper fiscal adjustment, creation of fiscal space for development spending, and prevention of a domestic and external banking crisis. Mr. Speaker, despite the benefits, we remain committed to exercising caution, informed by the lessons learned from our experiences and the sacrifices of the Ghanaian people. Our debt strategy going forward includes deepening reforms to ensure irreversibility and building buffers to reduce vulnerabilities and enhance resilience. The debt restructuring has been a crucial pillar of Ghana's economic recovery from the 2022 crisis. It has helped to restore confidence in the economy, and the following benefits are evident: rapid restoration of macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability, avoidance of steeper fiscal adjustment, creation of fiscal space for development spending, and prevention of a domestic and external banking crisis. Mr. Speaker, despite the benefits, we remain committed to exercising caution, informed by the lessons learned from our experiences and the sacrifices of the Ghanaian people. Our debt strategy going forward includes deepening reforms to ensure irreversibility and building buffers to reduce vulnerabilities and enhance resilience. The debt restructuring has been a crucial pillar of Ghana's economic recovery from the 2022 crisis. It has helped to restore confidence in the economy, and the following benefits are evident: rapid restoration of macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability, avoidance of steeper fiscal adjustment, creation of fiscal space for development spending, and prevention of a domestic and external banking crisis. Mr. Speaker, despite the benefits, we remain committed to exercising caution, informed by the lessons learned from our experiences and the sacrifices of the Ghanaian people. Our debt strategy going forward includes deepening reforms to ensure irreversibility and building buffers to reduce vulnerabilities and enhance resilience. The debt restructuring has been a crucial pillar of Ghana's economic recovery from the 2022 crisis. It has helped to restore confidence in the economy, and the following benefits are evident: rapid restoration of macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability, avoidance of steeper fiscal adjustment, creation of fiscal space for development spending, and prevention of a domestic and external banking crisis. Mr. Speaker, despite the benefits, we remain committed to exercising caution, informed by the lessons learned from our experiences and the sacrifices of the Ghanaian people. Our debt strategy going forward includes deepening reforms to ensure irreversibility and building buffers to reduce vulnerabilities and
Well, we're moving straight to look at some graphics on the revised indicators, which you'll see shortly on your screen. But we'll definitely be talking to an economist shortly. So we have the revised macroeconomic framework, and the overall real GDP growth rate revised upwards from 2.8% to 3.1%. And we have the non-oil real GDP growth rate revised upwards from 2.1% to 2.8%. Now, the growth in GDP deflator scaled down from 20.2% to 17.5%, and the nominal overall GDP has been revised from 150 billion Ghana cedi to 120 billion. Now, the non-oil GDP has been revised from 979 billion Ghana cedi to 977 billion Ghana cedi. Our end period headline inflation remains unchanged at 15%, and also the primary balance on commitment basis is actually maintained at a surplus of 0.5%. We also have the gross international reserves, which includes oil funds and encumbered or pledged assets, and it's covering not less than 3.0 months of imports. Now, moving on to the next one, you realize that that's the revised fiscal framework, and for that, our primary balance on a commitment basis remains unchanged at the targeted surplus of 0.5% of our GDP. Now, our total revenue and grants have actually been revised upwards by 0.5% to 177.2 billion Ghana cedi, which is 17.4% of the GDP in 2024. Now, from the 2024 budget target, which was 176.4 billion, that was 16.8% of our GDP. Also, our total expenditure commitment has been revised downwards by 2.1% to 219.7 billion Ghana cedi, which is 21.5% of GDP from the original budget projection. Also, if you look at it, the budget production was actually 226.7 billion Ghana cedi, which was 21.6% of our GDP. And also, finally, the overall balance on commitment basis has been revised from a deficit of 50.3 billion Ghana cedi, which is 4.8% of our GDP, to a deficit of 42.5 billion Ghana cedi, which is 4.2% of our GDP. And finally, if you look at our last slide on the screen, you realize that there's an update on the debts restructuring program. So government has successfully honored 2 coupon payments, with the second payment of about 5.9 billion Ghana cedi. Also, government and the OCC actually reached an agreement on an MOU, which is covering the restructuring of about 5.1 billion Ghana cedi of the official bilateral debt. Now, we also have the agreement that resulted in debt service relief amounting to $2.8 billion over the course of the IMF program. And government also reached an agreement in principle with the Eurobond holders committees to actually restructure approximately 13.1 billion US dollars of outstanding Eurobonds. We also have the debt restructuring, which is going to result in reducing the present value of our public debt to 55% by 2028. Well, we have a tax analyst, George Ayeowo, and he has actually commended governments for amending some 5 tax proposals, describing it as a prudent step to enhance and broaden the revenue mobilization base. This remark comes on the back of the presentation of the 2024 Midday budget review to Parliament, where the Finance Minister Mohammed Amin Adam disclosed the government has accrued over 74 billion Ghana cedi in total revenue and grants in the first half of the 2024 fiscal year. Now, in 2023, Parliament amended 5 tax proposals into law, which is Act. These acts were enacted as part of the various fiscal measures that were introduced under the 2024 budget statement and economic policy. These amendments are the value-added tax, the excise duty, the stamp duty act, the exemptions tax, the income tax. While speaking to ABC News Television, the tax analyst highlighted the effectiveness of this action toward government revenue revenue mobilization.
Yeah, thank you. So these amendments have been effective for a couple of months now, and they were put in place as a result of the IMF conditionality. So when you check a lot of these amendments, they go into the broader scheme of enhancing the current GDP, tax to GDP ratio, which means how much tax revenue is government going to derive from our current economic base. And so most of this did that. They're trying to, for example, one of it, you mentioned the stamp duty, is just to broaden the base, make it easier. The excise stamp duty, for example, and the VAT Act, it brought in a 5% flat rate, disallowing companies from deducting input VAT, for example. So all this has been put in to make sure that government increases its revenue. As you yourself and your viewers may be aware, government is in dire need of revenue because we've been shut out from the debt market internationally. So government is now looking home and to see how much money it can derive. So a lot of these interventions have come in place to increase government revenue intake and making sure that government can continue with its various expenditure and social intervention and all the capital infrastructure and things that it had promised. So it's been on this towing line. In fact, for most watchers of the space, this year's current budget review it has come in. Everybody knows well they can't do much about reducing tax expenditure because they still have to create fiscal space. And so the only other thing they can do is to make sure they rationalize their expenditure. That's making sure that they are more efficient, there's value for money, and making sure that areas are prioritized before we spend money in those areas. The other points which they can do is that they could have increased taxes, but in the current political climate and the elections less than 5 months away, it is not a prudent thing to do. So if you read through this current media's budget review, there hasn't been any tax increment. Rather, one of the successes that came from last year is something that the minister mentioned. With the e-invoicing, or other people call it e-VAT, and it's been quite successful. And I could see that the minister also mentioned that they want to go with electronic bookkeeping. So what that means is that they realize that the administrative part of the tax system, it's what they can tighten to make sure they are more efficient to collect more. And that's something that they are doing now. So they set up the e-invoicing, and what it actually does is that if anybody goes to any of the shopping malls now and buying from one of those big retailers, I don't want to mention some names, but what they actually do, your invoice that you receive from them, it's actually coming from GRA. So the teller at the shop would have inputted that you person A has just bought groceries of 300 cedis, but that invoice then goes through GRA system. GRA system computes the VAT before you get it, and once they've done that, it means that companies can no longer from what GR has been saying and what a lot of people have found out, that they cannot then declare 100 to GR, meanwhile they sold 300 to you. And once that was done, the stories you are hearing from that is that it's increased in some cases up to 3-4 times the monthly revenue from VAT. So these are the areas that GRA has been looking at, and the minister rightly mentioned some of this in the media budget review.
Well, he further disclosed that the government meeting its revenue targets for the fiscal year is crucial to enable it and back on more developmental projects. Now, prior to 2024 mid-year budget review, the Ghana Revenue Authority had recorded some 68 billion Ghana cedi as part of its 2024 mid-year revenue target. The 68 billion Ghana cedi represents a 0.2% increase, exceeding its mid-year budget against a half-year target of 67.9 billion Ghana cedi.
Of course, I mentioned earlier that Ghana doesn't have access to all the euro bonds and all those loans that we used to go for. So government is now forced to look home to raise the revenue. GRA now becomes very critical for government to be able to meet all its projects, all the infrastructure, and all those nice things that they want to do, the Agenda 111 and all those, and they have to be getting the revenue coming and more of it coming. So GRA meeting its revenue immediately means that government can continue with its projects that is being budgeted for. Of course, the government, when they did the 2024 budget, has already factored in some deficits. What this means is that if GRA is able to meet their target or even exceed it, it's actually going to tell us that their budget deficits will be met, or it will be kept up to a limit. And the country is just like a company. A deficit, for want of words, I'll put in almost like a loss. And so somebody has to finance that deficit. So if the government, for example, has budgeted that is going to run on a deficit, it means that there has to be some amount of money to come in somewhere. If that amount of money is not incoming, we are going to have the problems that we are having. High inflation, for example, it's a factor that leads to it. It means that we are going to continue witnessing the high inflation. So it immediate direct impact of GRA meeting is that the government is assured of meeting all these projects, and that deficits will be kept in check. And then wouldn't meet the target line. It also means that it bodes well for the economy. Once you've kept your budget deficits in order, it bodes well. Investors are more readily able to put in money. And then the IMF, of course, they're giving us targets. We recently received our second tranche. Once we keep on meeting the targets, the GDP continues to grow, then it means we are going to dig our way out of it. And let's not forget that next year is going to be a critical year. We are going to start paying all our interest again that has been held on for this year. So it means that we have to start building up, shoring up incomes up to, so that next year when we start making payment again for the interest, the economy wouldn't face a significant shock.
Well, joining us is an economist at the University of Ghana Business School, Patrick Asuman, and he's going to have a conversation with us definitely on the economy. Good afternoon, sir. You're welcome to ABC News.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to viewers.
Thank you. The finance minister says that Ghana's economy is recovering fast and strong. Is that the case from your end?
Well, I think it's been the mantra of the finance ministry for a while that the economy is on the path of recovery and is strong. I think usually when the finance ministry says that, they are focusing on some specific macroeconomic indicators. So they will say, for instance, like he said yesterday, the growth is stronger than was expected, and also that the depreciation has slowed down and the inflation rate has also slowed down. But I think we have to put all those figures in context. And the context is that even though the growth was higher than they projected, the actual growth was lower than what we had in 2022. Note that 2022 was seen as a very bad year for the economy. And yet, the growth that we are saying is higher than we projected. It's still lower than 2022. So when you begin to look at that, you begin to see. Now, the other thing is that the overall growth number masks some of the difficulties that the economy is having. You notice that some important sectors are still seeing massive contraction. So even in the first quarter of the year, the GDP number that was red, that was above our expectation. You notice that 6 of our 20 sectors that make up the economy contracted. They saw a reduction in their production, in the economic activity. And then other important sectors such as electricity production continue to contract. So when you begin to dig into the details, you realize that the picture is not as rosy as the finance minister is saying. And the other thing is that you shouldn't judge the strength of the economy only by the macroeconomic indicators that we are seeing. In the last couple of weeks, we've seen a lot of reports from the Ghana Statistical Service showing us information on multi-dimensional poverty, as well as the fraction of the youth who are neither in employment or education or training. And all those are going up. So you can't say the economy is stronger when many more people are being pushed into poverty and when the food costs are rising so quickly. And even though we say the inflation rate, for instance, has come down, don't forget that it's way above the medium-term target of 6 to 10. So, you can look at comparing where we are with the worst part of 2022, and you might say some of the indicators have made some progress, but I think it's a little bit too far-fetched to say the economy is strong. It isn't.
Well, it is far-fetched. Well, do you believe that the new revised targets are achievable, especially the unchanged end-year inflation of 15%?
In terms of the revision to the targets, the growth number is the only one I expected that is going to revise upward. The inflation target at the beginning of the year felt a little conservative because we ended last year with very steady disinflation. The rate of inflation was coming down. But in the first half of the year, we haven't really seen that disinflation continuing. So we've been hovering within the range of 23 to 25, going up some months and coming down some months. So the disinflation is not continuing. So I think that, the inflation target may be possible if we don't see any additional shocks, or if we don't see additional financing of the government by the central bank, which
well, I want to find out, is the revised expenditure target, it's been moved from 21.6% of the GDP to 21.5% of the GDP. Is it any good news, especially when there are fears that the government would overspend in an election year?
Now, that revised target, well, I think let's see where the revision is coming from. First, the government couldn't meet its first half revenue target. So there's a chance that the amount of revenue that we've targeted for the year, we might not meet it. So when that happens, in order to make sure that the fiscal deficit doesn't widen, it means that you have to rein in on expenditure. From the information presented, it's not that the government is making any cut to discretionary spending. It's clear that the savings that we have made from the debt restructuring is what we are cutting. That is what is leading to a reduction in our interest expenses. It's not that government has suddenly decided to reduce how much it's going to spend. So we have to put that in context and understand that the government is not really decided that it's going to cut its size or how much it spends or the other things that people have been clamoring that should target, except that because we are completing the debt exchange, especially the external side, we are making savings on the amount of interest that we would have paid. And that's automatically bringing the expenditure down.
So that means it's not like it's a deliberate effort to cut down on their spending, but it's just making some savings on the interest.
Exactly.
Well, the minister actually lauded the debt restructuring program as being a great pillar in the economic recovery. Well, however, central government debt as at end of June 2024 stood at 742 billion Ghana cedi, which is equivalent to 70.6% of the GDP. Has the debt restructuring really helped us?
Well, I think let's start with the external debt restructuring. The external debt restructuring has, in principle, brought us some savings. But in the main, what it has done is to give us some room, give us more time to repay. Especially the bilateral creditors, we are making some small savings on our interest, but the size of the nominal debt itself really didn't change much, except that our interest payments are coming down. So it is with the commercial partners that, based on the information that we've been given, we've made a little bit of savings. So that is the good news. Even there, you have to say, especially from our bilateral partners, many of us expected that we would have gotten a much bigger debt relief than we got, because these are there to help us with our development costs. But anyway, that's what it is. But the domestic debt exchange, it helped improve government books and made private individuals and businesses worse off, because the people who lost their long-term savings, including some retirees who are still picketing at the finance ministry, as well as the impact that it has had on the banking sector and other businesses, are pretty severe. So I think when you put all of these together, you have to balance it out. So obviously it has made the government books look stronger, but especially the domestic debt exchange hasn't helped the private sector in the country.
So you believe it actually is something that has helped? It's something that has been a positive influence on the economy?
So overall, yes, I think whatever savings we've made from the external debt restructuring is definitely something that is positive, because even though I think we expected that we could have gotten a lot more, you have to understand that even saying that some of the servicing has been postponed from up to 2026 helps us, because we are already in dire straits. Don't forget that the currency is already been wobbly throughout the course of the year. So if we didn't have this relief and we have had to make the full interest payment as we were scheduled, then you would have seen that the economy and indeed the currency would have been much deeper trouble. So of course there's some relief from there.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Patrick Azumin. He happens to be an economist at the University of Ghana Business School. We're moving on straight to the Finance Minister, Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam, actually says a total amount of 219 million Ghana cedi was paid as allowance to 104,000 nursing trainees from January to June 2024. Well, joining us for a Zoom conversation for further engagement is Mr. Lenof Amponsa, and he happens to be the International Relations Officer of the Trainee Nurses Association. Hello, good afternoon, sir. Thank you for joining us on ABC News.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
Well, the Finance Minister stated yesterday that an amount of 219 million Ghana cedi has been paid as allowance to 104,000 nursing trainees. Is this the case?
All right, thank you. First of all, extend greetings to my people, the Ghana Nurse Midwife Training Associations, and Mr. Francis Ekwakwasa. This issue, this news came to us yesterday whilst we were listening to the minister carefully whilst he was delivering the mid-year budget review. In fact, when we look at the figure the minister quoted and how trainees are going through these allowance issues, were a bit surprised that the minister quoted that such an amount has been paid to trainee nurses. Yes, we would admit that some payments were being made, but does that reflect how the total amount of that the ministry needs to pay us? No. So we're very surprised with the huge amount of money that the minister quoted yesterday, looking at the payment that has been made so far. So that money is too outrageous.
So you said some payments have been made, for that you acknowledge, but it doesn't amount to 219 million Ghana cedi as the minister stated yesterday. So how much exactly would you say has been made?
You see, for looking at the total amount of that the government was owing us this allowance, when we came out strongly that taking the 2022 batch, the ministry was owing them 1 month. Taking the 2021, we had 4 months in arrears. Yes, we admit that the ministry made some payment, but let's look at the total arrears that were there and the payment that were made. Taking into consideration the payment that the ministry did, they make only payments to only those in level 100, those in level 200, and those in level 300. And that out of the 27 months the ministry was owing the level 300s, the ministry paid.
Well, we're still on the nursing trainee allowance. So from what you actually just heard, he said that as much as they will acknowledge that they've been paid a certain amount of money, looking at how much they were owed, but it doesn't amount to 290 million Ghana cedi, as the finance minister stated yesterday. So definitely there's some, discrepancies in the figures. Either for them, it's not reflecting. That is not how much they've been paid, and the government still owes them. You're watching ABC News. We'll be back shortly. The Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Chamber of Construction Industry, Emmanuel Cherry, has expressed disappointment in government for failing to settle outstanding construction debts. Cherry, in an interview with ABC News GH on Tuesday, emphasized that the government owes contractors over 16 billion Ghana cedis, a debt that unpaid despite previous promises.
Yeah, for that amount in quotes. For some time ago, you heard the minister, the same minister, at the press conference insinuating that he has made 49 billion payment to contractors. I hope you heard that.
Yes.
Now, today is a different story altogether. So, the gospel has changed as we speak. So, therefore, it's early days, yes, I need to go into the archives and get the facts accurately, because what you say is very outrageous, and it's good to be true for me as we speak today. Because today, if you should go to the debt portfolio, that government owed contractors is over 16 billion. It's over 16 billion Ghana cedis, and keep increasing on daily basis because contractors are on site. Some of the contractors are on site, others are also moved from site. So on weekly, daily, monthly basis, there are new certificates which have been raised by contractors, and then it keeps increasing the debt portfolio. So therefore, all we are seeking government to do is to honor his side of the contractual obligation. As contractors and the consultants, we are ever ready to help make sure that we prosecute his infrastructure agenda. But it should also not take us for granted, thinking that we are Father Christmas. No, we also borrowing money from the same financial market. Today, the same government, as we speak, has passed a legislation that all government contracts now should be calculated in simple interest. Meanwhile, you are the same government who normally run you normally don't fulfill your part of the contractual obligations, and therefore, whose fault is it? It's not business of any contractor to say that he wants government to default, he wants to work and wait for over so months or years to go and calculate interest on delay payment. No, that is not the choice of contractors, and that is not the options of contractors. But you, the same government, you always default. So whenever you default, you are expecting us to use simple interest to calculate. Meanwhile, in the financial market today, my sister, go to the financial sector today, go to any bank, find out, take a facility. Before, if a facility is within 6 months gestation or duration, you default for 1 week or 2 weeks or 1 month or some few months or some few weeks. You will see that a calculation that will be placed before you. It's going to be a compound interest calculation. So, as a business person, I've gone to the financial market, borrowed money, work for you government, expecting.
Well, we'll definitely be back to the issue of the Chamber of Construction. But moving on to what we were talking about earlier about the government owing the nursing trainees, and also the finance minister mentioning a figure which the International Relations Officer for the nursing trainees saying that does not tally with how much they have been paid. So we're still being joined by Obingfo Lenof. He happens to be the International Relations Officer for the nursing trainee. Hello, sir. You're welcome back.
Thank you so much.
So I want to find out, were there some key issues that you expected the minister to address but didn't touch on?
Yes, exactly. Considering the total number of months that are in arrest, we expected that, yes, we will know the timeline. What is going to be the time frame? Are they going to continue paying the student allowance? Because currently, as we are speaking, we have over 56 months in arrears that has not been paid. We have the 2022 batch that they've completed school, but the government is still owing them over 7 months that still has not been paid. So we're looking at how this issue is going to be addressed. Again, we, the trainee nurses, we've also been talking about the outrageous fees that we are paying for every semester. So looking at our engagement that we had over the month with the ministry, we're hoping for that, yes, our concerns with the fees will be addressed. Because as we are speaking now, the trainee nurse pays not less than 3,800 Ghana cedis as a semester fee, hoping that at least the allowance will come in a way support us. But the allowance also is not coming again. So this has become a big burden to us. So we were expecting at least to hear good news from the minister that at least our fees, something has been done to it. Either there have been some reduction in our fees, because each semester the fees keep increasing, but we didn't hear anything like that. We're also hoping that at least we will get to know that our allowance is going to be paid. But as we stand now, we don't know our left from our right. So in fact, it is a burden to us. What we were expecting, in fact, we didn't get it yesterday. After the day, as leaders, we didn't even know what to even communicate to our members, and it is so painful.
So you mentioned that you're actually being owed for 56 weeks of allowance.
Yes, calculating the months that we are being owed from each level. That is the 2022, the 2020 batch, the 2021, the 2022, the 2023, and 2024 batch. When you sum them up, it is over 56 months, of which we are demanding that at least the government needs to pay us.
And that is a total of how much?
That is a total of, it gives you 57 months. Yes, 57 months.
No, the exact amount you're owed by government.
Okay, looking at the exact amount, I don't have the total figure here now, but we can multiply 56 months by 400 Ghana cedis a month. That is what we are being owed.
That is the amount you're being owed by the government. Now, has the association made any efforts to engage government in conversation on the payment? I mean, yesterday you had this. Did you take any initiative to actually engage the government about the figures that the finance minister put out in Parliament?
Exactly so. Yesterday, as executives, we sat down and hoping that by the close of the day, they are going to release our communique addressing the issue concerning us in the budget. In fact, our hopes were not met. We didn't get any good news as student leaders, where we can even go in and assure our members that indeed this is how things are moving towards us. So, as you rightly said, we are looking forward that by the close of the day, our communique will be out addressing our concern and the grievances that the figure that the minister gave out.
Well, thank you so much. We were joined by Obingfo Lenof. He happens to be the International Relations Officer for the Nursing Trainee Association, and he was actually bemoaning the fact that the figure that the finance minister actually disclosed in government has been paid to the nursing trainees is not the exact figure they have received. So they're making efforts to actually reach out to government and get the amount of money that they are owed. Well, moving on to works and housing, we have Minister for Works and Housing Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah has disclosed that the government will in the coming days roll out a reformed housing package to tackle the challenges in the housing sector and boost Ghana's housing production. Well, according to the minister, the reform package will outline 7 target areas to address Ghana's housing deficit by empowering the private sector to provide cheaper and decent houses for Ghanaians. Now, there's more in this wrap.
Although Ghana's housing deficit has improved in recent times, as shown by the Ghana Statistical Service survey in 2021, that the deficit has reduced from 2.8 million to 1.8 million in 2021, several challenges still persist. However, Works and Housing Minister Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah, in an exclusive interview with ABC News Ghana, says the government has identified key areas to address the lingering challenges in the sector. He says the government has engaged with key stakeholders in the sector and will soon announce a reform package after cabinet and parliamentary approval to tackle the problems bedeviling the housing sector.
The way to do it is by reforming the housing sector and by giving the private sector some incentives to make it cheaper and easier for them to build. And working with 28 different stakeholder groups, we have come up with a reform package, a PPP program with incentives that will support the private sector so that they can build faster and cheaper for the benefit of Ghanaians.
The minister also disclosed that Ghana is currently producing 40,000 housing units a year, but with a reform policy, the government will double Ghana's housing production.
If you look at the housing market in Ghana today, 60% of Ghanaians will not be able to get access to housing unless they get some sort of support, what we call social housing. 60% of Ghanaians. 35% of Ghanaians can only get property in the affordable housing range. And 5% of Ghanaians are the ones who can actually comfortably build or buy property without any major challenges. Now today, Ghana is producing about 40,000 houses a year. It's all being produced by the private sector, but they're only catering for the 5% in the market and sometimes a little below that. The majority of us, from the 60% to the 35% who are looking for accommodation, cannot get it. And so landlords are always, either increasing their rent arbitrarily or asking for 2 years or sometimes 3 years. Agents are taking everybody for a ride. We have to do better to deliver more housing units and move from the 40,000 units to maybe double that.
Well, moving on and moving away from that to business. Through the Finance Ministry has disclosed it will reintroduce the road toll after its cessation in 2021. The Finance Minister, Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam, has announced the Cabinet has approved a framework to guide the implementation process of the reintroduction of the tolls in 2025. The Karaga lawmaker made this announcement on Tuesday, July 23, 2024, while presenting the 2024 mid-year budget review to Parliament. My colleague Ruth Sechi has the rest of the story. Well, moving on, we'll take a short commercial break. We'll be right back with sports. Football Association has imposed a fine of 100,000 Ghana cedi on the Real Tamale United for behavior that brought the game into disrepute. The penalty comes in response to a violation of Section 34, Article 6D of the GFA Premier League regulations. The fine was issued following an investigation into the Matchday 28 game against Dreams FC that was held at the Theatre of Dreams. Now, RTU FC was found to have intentionally deceived the match officials by using unregistered players to impersonate officially registered players of the club. This misconduct undermined the integrity of the game. The club admitted to the charges and sought leniency, explaining that the use of unregistered players were due to the registered players refusing to make the trip. Despite this explanation, the GFA Disciplinary Committee deemed the actions a serious breach of regulations and imposed a fine to uphold the standards of the league. RTU suffered relegation from the league and will compete in the Division 1 league in the upcoming season. Well, moving on, GFA announces the Disciplinary Committee of the Ghana Football Association has imposed a fine of 100,000 Ghana cedi on Real Tamale United. Well, that was a sports story that we just brought to you. You're watching ABC News Ghana. Do stay with us.
Inventor Ghana Season 3 is here. ScanBrain Limited, organizers of the Best Inventor Ghana, has opened registration for the third season of this innovative show. Who can enter? Manufacturers of innovative solutions for daily use. Winner goes home with 5,000 Ghana cedi. First runner-up with 3,000 Ghana cedi. And second runner-up with 2,000.
Well, international news, we have rescue teams have so far retrieved the bodies of 229 people that were killed in 2 landslides in southern Ethiopia. Local officials have confirmed. Now, the landslides occurred on Sunday evening and Monday morning after heavy rains in a remote mountainous area of the Gofa zone. The local authorities said the search for survivors was continuing vigorously, but the death toll could yet increase. Now, Southern Ethiopia is among the areas of the country that have been hit by particularly heavy rain and flooding in recent months, according to the UN's Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. But instances of landslides and floods go back further. In May 2016, at least 50 people were killed in floods and landslides following heavy rain across the south of the country. Dozens.
The death toll from 2 landslides in southern Ethiopia has risen sharply.
Well, moving on to Uganda and away from Ethiopia, dozens of people have been detained in the Ugandan capital Kampala after joining scattered anti-corruption protests in defiance of an official ban. Around 60 people, including a prominent TV presenter and 3 young protest leaders, were hurriedly brought before courts and remanded in custody following a march on the country's parliament on Tuesday. today. President Yoweri Museveni warned protesters about the potential consequences of their actions, saying they are playing with fire. The march, organized on social media, aimed to address concerns about corruption involving public officials. Despite the police's refusal to grant permission for the march, protesters gathered with signs denouncing corruption. The situation escalated as riot officers and security forces intervened, leading to several arrests. Police have intensified security in the capital of Kampala. Dozens of people have also been detained, like we mentioned, after joining scattered anti-corruption protests in defiance of an official ban. Now, lawyers said around 60 people, including a TV presenter and 3 young protest leaders, were hurriedly brought before courts. Now, let's take a look at some of the headlines that we had today. So, in the headlines, we had Ghana's economy reported seeing increase in growth rate as Finance Minister announced a steady increase in growth rate. And then despite ballooning public debt stock reaching 742 billion, government reports a positive outlook regarding Ghana's medium-term macroeconomic. Also, on the nurses and teacher trainees challenge Finance Minister's announcement of paying over 400 million cedis. Overpaying 400 million cedis to clear outstanding arrears. And we looked at some business news. Government also announces reintroduction of road tolls in 2025. And on the international front, we looked at dozens being arrested in Uganda and also some landslides in Ethiopia. This has been the Midday News. My name is Epifania Jokotok Ligwe. Do have a lovely day.